Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Thank you for tuning in again this week on YouTube, Google Play, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. Very happy to be on there, so thank you for that. And iHeart and Stitcher rather new to our lineup, and thank you, and thank you. This is episode 46. Big show today. Brendan Walsh is going to be on, very respected trainer. He's a multiple graded stakes winning trainer. He had one of the best 2-year-olds of this past year, Maxfield, who unfortunately had a chip in the ankle and had to be pulled out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But he's resting and getting ready for a 3-year-old campaign. And then we'll be talking with Evan Hammonds, who is the managing editor of Blood Horse, one of the terrific magazines always in the thoroughbred business. For years it has been and remains kind of the standard, kind of like the New York Times or Washington Post of the business. Maxfield, Derby time. Scott Hall on lead guitar.
Yes, sir.
Ben Chaffin's on bass.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thomas Kenny taking a break today, but thank you guys last week for the Best of show.
Hey, that was fun. We went a little crazy. We hope the fans don't mind. We did the whole kind of pirate. We were in black and white. Kenny wasn't here. Fun look. I didn't mean that bad.
I liked it, actually. I thought it worked out great.
That's
So
great.
if you have a chance, check out episode 45 last week. If you haven't done so, please do that. But, the Derby now, listen, you could talk about the Derby anytime. And they already have the first Derby future out that closed December 1st at Churchill Downs. Tiz the Law, 11-1. Dennis's Moment, 12-1. Maxfield at 13-1. So Maxfield's trainer, Brendan Walsh, coming up a little later in the Vegas books. And, it changes. It's changing as we talk, depending on what's coming in. Dennis's Moment's 14-1. Tiz the Law, 14-1. They're the co-choices. Maxfield at 16-1. Interesting in there, Storm the Court, the winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, the long shot winner, is a long shot in the Derby future at 41-1. And right now, 25-1 in Vegas. But with Storm the Court being such a big upset, with Dennis's Moment never having his moment, stumbling out of the gate, never got in the race, with Maxfield being scratched from that race, I can't remember a year going into the Derby. It's been a while since it's been this wide open, Ben. I mean, it really is, because usually like a game winner a couple of years ago, somebody looks so good, you say, okay, that's the horse to beat right now. And there's a couple improbable, the Baffert stable that year, 2 or 3 horses you can look at. They're going to be the horses to beat. This year, it's kind of like what might be for next year. Dennis's Moment didn't get a good race. Maxfield set out the race. A long shot wins the race.
Wow. I mean, that it's just so hard to think about because it's so far in the future.
Yeah.
Like, how do you predict how these horses are even going to work? Because one of them could potentially just not want to race anymore.
Well, did he get tired? They get injured. That's why it's amazing to me when they bring a 2-year-old around, they make it back to the Derby. When they make it to the Derby, that's what Brendan Walsh is trying to do with Maxfield. And when we come back, we will talk to him as he is down in New Orleans and find out about the future of Maxfield and what is going on in his world. All that coming up on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, on 93.9 in Louisville. More to come. And again, downloaded in 22 countries. We appreciate your support. One of those countries that listens to us on a regular basis is Ireland, which is the home of one of the really class guys in the business, Brendan Walsh, the trainer of many multiple graded stakes winners, including a terrific 2-year-old Maxfield. And he joins us now from New Orleans, where he'll base this winter. Brendan, thanks for being on.
Hi, Kenny. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself? What's the process of, when it's like a lot of people go south for the winter? You trainers go south for the winter or fairly close to south as you can. And you chose to obviously keep it back at the fairgrounds where you've been.
Well, I send half the horses to the fairgrounds, Kenny, and then I send the other half to Palm Meadows in Florida and run it at Gulfstream primarily. So it's a nice mix between the two because, I go from one to the other myself. I send one of my assistants to Florida, one to New Orleans, and there's a direct flight between the two places. So, I can be at one or the other pretty easy all the time. So I get to see the horses as much as I can.
Does it matter where you go with which horse? Do you map that out pretty thoroughly, Brendan, and start working on that a few weeks in advance, that this one will be at Palmettos, this one will be at the fairgrounds?
It all it all depends really on, there's a lot of factors. Just some owners prefer to be at one or the other. It works good for me. I send a lot of the horses. I have a good mix. Half the people tend to prefer Palmettos, half like New Orleans, and we can make it fit either place. And then of course Florida's good, Kenny, because you can, we back off a good few horses in the fall after the fall period, kind of December, give them an easy month in December and bring them down to Palmettos, early, middle of January, and get them ready for Kentucky. Palmettos is great. You can work horses on the grass there as much as you want, pretty much. So that's a big help as well. So, and then a lot of the more active horses, initially, the younger horses, the 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, a lot of them tend to go to New Orleans. So we managed to. It's a lot of ducking and diving, but we managed to mix it up pretty good, and I think we've a nice team of horses in both places.
I think really early on in your career, you go out on your own in 2012, I believe, and New Orleans has kind of been almost a second home for you.
Yeah, actually, Kenny, I started training in Florida. The first winter I started training started in Florida, but about this is our 4th winter now in New Orleans. We kind of got a little bigger and we couldn't get enough stalls in Florida, so we decided we'd try New Orleans. And the first year we came down here, we had a fantastic excuse me, I'm trying to sneeze. We had a fantastic winter. It was the year we won the New Orleans Handicap with Honourable Judy and the Mine Shaft with him, and we had a couple of other really nice stakes wins down here. And I was thinking to myself, why had I not come down here sooner? But the weather was beautiful. Of course, the last couple of years down here, the weather hasn't been so good, and we haven't been winning any New Orleans handicaps since either. But no, it's a great spot. It's a nice place to come. The horses tend to do really well down here because it's a nice kind of a cool mornings, warm afternoon climate, and the track is fantastic here. It's a great surface, and so it works out good. And yeah, I mean, it fits the program well.
And they have maybe the best food in the country at the Fairgrounds racetrack.
Yeah,
by racetrack standards.
Yeah, or New Orleans in general, Kenny. You always end up going back up to Kentucky 4 or 5 pounds heavier than what you came in. If you're running up light there, leaving Kentucky, you tend to put it back on when we get to New Orleans. So, but it's nice. It's good fun down here, and people enjoy it and that. So it's a good spot.
We're talking with Brendan Walsh, a multiple stakes winning trainer. He mentioned Honorable Duty, Proctor's Ledge, Carey Street, Multiplier, and of course, an incredible 2-year-old Maxfield that unfortunately for you, you had to take a step back this year at the Breeders' Cup. He came up, he didn't look quite right, and being the great horseman you are, you made the decision for the horse that there'll be plenty of racing ahead if you keep him healthy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Kenny. Listen, it was a no-brainer in California. He wasn't moving quite right. So we decided it didn't take much thinking, unless the horse was 110%, we weren't going to run him. So we stopped on him and brought him back and looked into him, and he had a chip in an ankle, which we had taken out. And, in hindsight, a lot of people said to me, the way the race worked out and all, he probably would have had a very good chance to have won it. We'll never know if he would or not. But it was a tough race, and it seemed like a race was hard on the horses that ran on it, and sometimes these things happen for a reason, and it might actually, it might work to our advantage too. It was a tough race to put a 2-year-old through, and I'm just glad we spotted his issue when we did, and we didn't. Sometimes you don't see these things, and you end up running, and they come back injured, and then you can ruin a horse for life with stuff like that. So, he's a horse we've always thought would be a better horse, as a 3 and as a 4-year-old. And what he's done as a 2-year-old, I mean, he's totally overachieved, I think, if nothing else. And physically and mentally, he'll be a better horse next year and the year after, and we'll look forward to that.
And a lot of people still paying attention, Brendan. As you know, the first Derby Future comes out. He's in the top 3 in Vegas right now. He's in the top 3 in the Derby Future book. So expectations high. Don't you love that? I guess, though, it's better than not having a potential Derby runner, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, it's unbelievable to have a horse, a nice, high-profile horse like him, And I mean, it just goes to show how impressive he was, especially that day at Keeneland.
Yeah.
Because people tend to forget these horses as time goes along. I mean, the picture changes. We saw last weekend again, the whole picture changes. I mean, it'll change 20 times between now and May. So, it's nice that people haven't forgotten us. And, I think it's a mark of how impressive he was as a 2-year-old.
And Brendan, with the successes you've had and the horses you've been associated with as assistant and throughout your career, Maxfield at Keeneland, that was one of the most impressive performances I've seen a 2-year-old in a while. I mean, he really looked great.
Yeah, no, it took a long time to sink in, Kenny, but the more we look at it, the more impressive he was. And God, it was fantastic. It's just unbelievable to have a horse of that caliber, because then, you get very good horses, and we've had good horses, and no disrespect to any of the good horses we've had, but he looks like, that day he looked like he was on another level again. So to have a, kind of horse like him is probably a horse you might be lucky to have maybe just once in your career, if even that,
Yeah, and you certainly, and I know that the care you're giving him right now. What is his winter schedule like before you get him back into racing as a 3-year-old, Brendan?
Well, he's over in Godolphin's pre-training facility right now at Keeneland. So, he's just resting at the moment, and he's just walking, and next week I think he's ready to start maybe some paddock turnout and that. So he'll get another good month under his belt there, hopefully. And like I said, the first week or two in January, we'll talk about getting him in and get him down to Florida, and then we'll just we'll work it from there. I mean, it doesn't, it cuts us a little tight on time. But on saying that, he's actually, for a big horse, he's pretty easy a horse to get fit. I don't think that'll be a problem, but we wouldn't want to miss any time, in the interim. But look, we won't force him either, Kenny, to make the Derby. If if everything runs smoothly and he makes it, or he makes the preps, or what we have to do to make the Derby, then we'll do it. But we're not going to, do something stupid just to make the Derby and ruin the horse in the process. We'll let him tell us, and we'll go along from there, because, obviously everyone wants to win the Derby, and you're only, like we said earlier, it's not going to be every year that you're going to get a horse that's capable of winning it. But on the same hand, there's a lot of good 3-year-old races after, and good 4-year-old races next year. And, I think the main thing is we keep the best interests of the horse in mind, and go from there.
The outstanding Maxfield, maybe the Derby favorite, who knows, by the time the spring rolls around. We're talking with his trainer, Brendan Walsh. More with Brendan when we come back here on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Delighted to have Brendan Walsh with us. He's already down at the fairgrounds in New Orleans getting ready for the winter. He'll have horses in Florida and in New Orleans. And as we were talking about, Maxfield, who's one to watch for the Derby in 2020 in Kentucky right now, We'll be going to Florida, if all goes well, probably around the first of the year. Brendan, yourself, I mean, what a career this has been. County Cork, I believe. Is that correct in Ireland?
That's correct, Kenny. Yeah, little village in Cork there, down by the sea.
And being an Irish guy myself, Rice is Irish. I didn't want to. I sure didn't want to miss the county. I'd been very embarrassed if I had. But
Yeah,
you went to jockey school at the Curragh, right? Wait,
I did originally. Yeah, I wanted to be a jockey originally, Kenny, and it didn't quite work out. I went to the jockey school, and I think I just basically got very homesick. The kids at home. I think we were 15 when we went there, and it's young enough for kids to be taken away from home. And I don't think they really do it that young anymore. I think now they've raised the age a little bit. But yeah, I got a bit homesick and just went back home and finished stout school and then kind of went the stud farm route for a couple of years. But, there wasn't enough action in that for me, Kenny. So the racing dragged me back. And, I ended up back on Sheikh Mohammed's farm in Kildangan in Ireland. And we used to break and pre-train a lot of his stock. In fact, all of his stock at the time. I mean, it was very busy. So we galloped there, and I got lucky enough the first year, actually, we broke horses for Godolphin. They brought us out to Dubai, and I went out and I got to know some of the guys in the main Godolphin part of the outfit. And, I ended up taking a job with them after a couple of years. They asked me to go to Newmarket, and we just went from there. I went from being a rider to a foreman to help run a barn and all that. And we did I think I did 9 winters in Dubai and all that. Go to Dubai for the winter and then come back to the UK or to the US for the summer. And so it was a fantastic job around some fantastic horses and some great people,
And a great relationship you've had with Godolphin all these years.
Unbelievable, and it was unreal, Kenny, to actually win my first Grade 1 for them. I mean,
Yeah.
We used to look at all that back in the day, and you'd never think that you would ever train a horse, especially a horse like Maxfield, to win a Grade 1 for them. But yeah, I mean, it was great, and of course going to Dubai last year was fantastic with Plus Parfait to win the Derby. It was surreal. The last 12 months have been unbelievable. Like this time last year, if you had told me all this was going to happen, I'd have said you were crazy.
Well, and isn't that the great thing about the sport, and maybe frustrating, I know, but especially when good guys like you and respected horsemen like you, Brendan Walsh, when you get on this streak like that, I think a lot of people are happy for you, like me. I'm sure you know that a lot of people out there are rooting for you because they respect how you treat the horses, and it's about the horses. And, of course, you want to win, but it's about the horses.
Of course. At the end of the day, Kenny, we'd be nowhere without them, and that's the sad thing about all the controversy that's going on at the moment. With everything with your tracks and what have you here, there, and everything. People don't realize, the vast majority of people that are in horse racing, at the end of the day, it all boils down to the horses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything we do every day goes into the care of the horses. If I thought we couldn't care for our horses properly and we didn't have the, everything in place to give them, 200% care,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do it.
Right.
And people tend to forget that. And, at the end of the day, we all do it because we all love horses. And that's why we came into the sport initially. We didn't come into the sport initially to win, Grade 1s or any of that. We came into it because we loved horses. And people forget that. And that's the sad part of it all, is that tends to be forgotten in all this.
Yeah.
We all want to do what's best for the horse at the end of the day. And, I think people are getting branded wrongly because of it,
And you growing up in Ireland, and I had the pleasure of covering the Irish Derby. I was at the Curragh when Galileo won.
Oh, wow.
Oh, what a race, what a horse.
Yeah.
But the whole culture over there, to visit some of the farms like I did and be around it, I mean, it's such pride and generational, guys whose father grew up and were grooms and things. There's great pride in that. I think it's true in other parts, but there's a uniqueness to me about the way the Irish culture is with horse racing, Brendan.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, everybody, everyone knows somebody, like the jockeys and the trainers and that are household names, and some of the horses are household names in Ireland. Everybody watches the Derby, they watch the Grand National, they watch Cheltenham every year, and there's just a great, my family didn't have horses, but they had an interest, and my dad always had a great interest in horses, and of course when I went into the game, then he started following it more and more. But it's huge in Ireland. But a lot of Irish people are country people, Kenny, and if you're not brought up around horses, you're brought up around animals in general, and there's just a kind of a country way about the place, and so I think people are just drawn towards racing in Ireland, and it's great. You a lot of great horse people came out of Ireland back through the years. Some of the
legends.
I mean, that explains itself, really.
Who's the biggest influence been on you so far, do you think, as far as a trainer? I think I know the answer, but I'll ask you.
My dad was a huge influence on me. Eddie Keneally was a big influence on me. Mark Wallace, who I worked in Newmarket, was a big influence on me. I've had there's too many people to name. But I've had a lot of people that have had a huge input into my whole career as we went along. Jimmy Lenihan, a guy that ran the farms, Sheikh Mohammed's farms in Ireland. They've all, and they've been people who still to this day. I mean, Jimmy was in Dubai the night the horse won the Derby. Them people have been invaluable to me, Kenny.
Right. And I think vice versa. I figured you'd certainly mention Eddie, and I knew you'd mention your dad. That was kind of my two guesses right off the top, because it's kind of like horses in general, isn't it? There's a lot of layers. You're going to have 3-year-olds, you're going to have some grass horses, you're going to have some sprinters. I think that's kind of like everybody's life, isn't it? No matter what career they go in, there's so many people that help put a little bit of themselves into you, as they have with me in my career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, everybody helps. There's been a lot of people. I mean, if I started to
Sure.
think and talk about people that have had, just put very, very positive ideas or have had a positive input in my career, Kenny, I'd be here all day if we started to go through people, but they've been great people. I've been very lucky, and I think that's been a big part of it. We've built up some good connections, and a lot of them people have helped me along the way, and I could never thank them enough. A lot of these people, they've been fantastic.
Well, it's a good run. You're still on a good run. And we'll keep an eye on you down at the fairgrounds this year, and certainly keep an eye on the progress of Maxfield, who is going to be one to watch for the 2020 Derby, and I certainly hope you're there and all systems are go for that.
Yeah, please God, Kenny, we'll try our best anyway to make it, and who knows, it'd be really great to be part of another one. We got a little taste of it last year with Plus Q, and I remember driving back to Keeneland the Monday after the Derby last year, going over to train, and I thought I'd be exhausted after the Derby because I had Dubai a month before that, my dad's death in between it, and I thought, I'm going to be exhausted. All I had in my mind was trying to find the next one to have another go again. So once you get a taste of it at all, I think you're hooked on it then, and I can understand now why in Europe it's a little different, but here you ask anybody, they all if you ask any trainer, they'll tell you the race they really want to win is the Kentucky Derby at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, Brendan, all the best to you, and we'll be in touch and catch up again soon, okay?
Thanks very much, Kenny.
Thank you, Brendan Walsh. Talented trainer, multiple graded stakes winners, including Maxfield, one to watch in 2020 Derby scene. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Delighted that you're with us. Whatever you're doing and listening to us from iHeartRadio to Stitcher to iPad, iTunes, whatever.
Stop right now.
Stop right now. Blood Horse, as I said, to me, the gold standard has been for years. I read it. I keep up with it. I've known this man for years. He's the managing editor for 20 plus years. And look, he's made it here to the bunker live and in person, Evan Hammonds.
Very excited to be here, Kenny.
Calm down.
I will.
Pace yourself. It was all those, I forget all the media things we're on. It's a different world today, isn't it? Remember, this was it. You'd read the Blood Horse. You'd pick up like a racing forum. You didn't listen to anything else out there. There was very few things to listen to. And now you got, like I say, seriously, we're on about 7 different platforms from radio, social media, this iHeart and Stitcher, all that.
I used to go to Wheeler's Pharmacy on Duke Road,
Yeah.
Romney Road, and
Yeah.
wait for the racing forms to be dropped there. And you would pick it up, and it would have, it was 48 hours, so you had your PPs for Churchill Downs and Keeneland.
Yeah, those were the days.
Then you start loading stuff online, and now you're loading stuff online every 15 minutes.
See, I'm guilty of reading a lot online now,
It's okay.
and I.
A lot of stuff on bloodhorse.com, Bloodhorse Daily, and Bloodhorse
Yes,
Magazine, yeah.
and great stuff. And our friend Lenny Schulman has a great article on Charlie Whittingham.
It's a lot of fun.
That's in the
It's a lot of
recent
fun.
edition. And that's part of it, isn't it, now? Because you kind of go back and revisit some of the legends or some of the great stories.
That's true. And no deeper story than somebody like Charlie Whittingham. And once Lenny starts writing or starts gathering all the stuff in our morgue files and whatnot, he keeps saying, I might need a few more words. I'm like, on a story like this, we let it run, and actually it turned out to be 14 pages.
Yeah.
And digging around in the photo library and finding all kinds of photos, finding photos of Charlie Whittingham with hair.
Wow. See,
yeah.
I never saw Charlie Whittingham with hair till I saw the picture.
I know. There's one. Yeah, we found one photo. We have like the 3 big, huge files of Whittingham photos. One with hair.
He was the bald eagle when I met him.
Yeah.
Back when he came in with Ferdinand.
Yeah.
That's the first time I ever met him.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Anyway, a great story by Lenny with a lot of digging around and great visuals. And Blood Horse is a great product.
You have been there. You've had an interesting career. You've lived all over. You're a Kentucky guy that lived all over and wound up coming back to Kentucky for the Blood Horse.
Yeah, actually, when I was in college, I worked for Blood Horse.
Okay.
Part-time, and wrote stallion register pages, wrote ad copy, did all kinds of stuff, and then did that for a while, and moved to New York and did that for a while, and then actually saw a ad for a thing called Figs Forum, which was a little startup newspaper in New York, and that went out of business after about 6 months, but all the guys that worked there got hired at the Racing Forum.
Wow.
In New Jersey. So did that with Steve Haskin and a bunch of other guys, and that morphed into desktop publishing being changed around in the 90s, which then Racing Forum reconsolidated in Phoenix. They moved all of their offices out there.
Yeah.
Went out there for a couple of years, and then got a call from, through Steve Haskin, got a call from Ray Pollock to come back to the Blood Horse. So.
And we're thankful you did. We're thankful you did.
It's the circle of life, as they say.
It is, and and as we know, it's a small world. Racing is a small world.
Yeah, it is. It is very small, and getting smaller every day. I mean,
well, that's been the biggest change I've noticed. Is it's I guess it's just, we don't want to be the doom and gloom. We know what happened this year. Does the future look pretty good for racing? Do you think, in your opinion?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, the foal crop continues to shrink, about 3 or 4% a year, which is a concern. But from that, I think there are a lot more opportunities racing-wise because there's not as many foals.
Yeah.
And the racetracks are still having to fill races. I mean, if you have the right horse, have an opportunity. Also, state-bred operations have all kinds of incentive plans now for state-bred, state-sired horses like New York. Next weekend, they have 2 $500,000 races for state-sired horses.
Yeah.
Florida's got the Florida sire thing. Churchill Downs, Churchill Downs buying Turfway.
How about that?
Putting a lot of money. So there's a lot of good money at Turfway this winter. There was a lot more than a year ago. And instant racing or historical horse racing here in Louisville. I mean, they're going to be running for $80,000, $90,000 maiden races at Churchill next year. So there is, I think there's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
For racing.
I think there were some great moments. I know what the big story is going to be this year when people look back, what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at some of the individual performances, you were talking about a few earlier before we
talked
went
about
on.
a few, yeah. I mean, yeah, the Derby.
Yeah.
The Derby was the penultimate thing, and I wanted to ask you about that because you watch. I mean, we've all seen hundreds of Derbies or lots of Derbies, and this one in particular, you're out on the track trying to figure out what's going on. I'm in my bunker,
Yeah.
in the press box doing the online story, and again, they've never disqualified the winner, so I'm banging away with the story writing out that Maximum Security's won the Derby and da da da, and I'm just waiting for the official sign to push the button, and you're standing there for 15 minutes. I said, I think I better start writing another story here. And I wanted to ask you how you handled that situation when you're in a difficult situation on live television.
You know, you come out, and I was looking for, well, I saw that Nick Luck was already with, because as you know, they don't bring them over to us.
No.
It's not like the
It's
sports
a
information
free-for-all
director
out there.
has
Yeah,
the coach.
yeah.
And many times, you know, as I witnessed with like Art Sherman and Graham Motion and somebody got, you know, they're not familiar with how to get around to get to it. It's, you know, if you're not familiar with Churchill Downs. This case, I looked over, there's Bill Mott. Well, I saw what horse is in second place. That would be Country House.
Yeah.
Bill Mott might be a story here. So I go over.
And he's unassuming. He's probably standing over the corner with his arms crossed.
So I go over and he looks at me and I said, I need to talk with you or something to that effect. He said, yeah, I thought you might or something to that effect. He said, yeah, well, let's do it or whatever. And I tell the producer and he says, yeah, you got Mott? And then Mott gave a great quote, which turned out right. You know, something I'm not verbatim here, but if had this been any other race, any other day, the horse would automatically been disqualified. You know, he said that that was the gist of it, and that was it. And as it turned out, in a long, I think somebody told me it was 21:57. They put the clock on it.
Yeah. Well, it was an eternity trying to figure out what happened, and then even afterwards, it was crazy too. Because I mean, again, the Derby, you have so many people there and so many watching on TV that don't understand racing, and even if you do, the disqualification was kind of confusing.
Yeah, it was. I say
so everybody's scratching their heads.
Deadlines like that, when you're at the track, how fast do you have to turn this around?
Well, I mean, you have time, but I mean, generally how we do it is, you know, you have like the old-fashioned news bulletin, which is 2 or 3 paragraphs that you want to put up as soon as it's official, and then while that's up for a while, you could go back and you add in commentary and pedigree information, all that stuff. So then I go back in and reload that story, which is a little longer, and then while that's on there, you're continuing to build. So you may reload this story 4 or 5 times in the course of an hour.
And the Derby was.
and I sat there for 10 minutes waiting to push the button, and then started writing the other story. But you wanted to make sure that you got rid of the Maximum Security story.
Yeah.
Before you plugged in the country.
It was almost Dewey wins.
Yeah, it was about 3 seconds away from being posted. Yeah.
Well, and you know, and I was walking, and when I was walking out there, and I heard him, you know, I'm listening to Mike Tirico, Randy Moss, and Jerry Bailey talking about
you
it.
all are on a time frame. I've got all night to write the story.
And see, I'm out there with Bob Baffert was my assignment. I was going to be with Bob. Well, I see that, you know, his horses are not going to win, so now I start venturing out toward the front side, you know, to see in case everybody's okay, if I need to talk to a vet or whatever. And that's when I hear all this.
Your ears going crazy.
I'm hearing all this, and that's when I started looking around and seeing who was there. And fortunately, Bill Mott wasn't too far away.
That's where you cover the story, but you've got a 30-second deadline. And I've got 30 minutes, and then for the magazine, I've got 30 hours. Because for the magazine, you've got to do a different story that's a feature.
And he does it so well.
Well, we do what we can do.
We'll be back with more managing editor of the Blood Horse, Evan Hammonds, right here on The Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to The Horse Racing Show. Delighted to have a good friend of mine for many years, Evan Hammonds, managing editor of the Blood Horse. Sorry to out you as my friend. I don't want to ruin your reputation,
well,
shoot you down or anything.
Got a certain reputation we have to uphold.
That's right. And the Blood Horse has a great reputation. I love reading
Thank
it.
you.
The people you have that you brought in and everything, honestly, it's really great.
Thank you.
I sound like Chris Farley. Hey, remember
remember
that time? That was great, man.
Remember that time we cashed that ticket for $360?
Yeah. Okay, when you look back, okay, aside from we know the Santa Anita problems and the problems of tracks and all that, and about the Derby and all that, I think that's going to be right there at the forefront. But there were some great moments on the track and some individual moments, like, for me, just recently, like Todd Pletcher wins his first Classic. Bill Mott wins his first Kentucky Derby. I thought individually there was a couple of big moments this year.
There were, and we were talking earlier, as far as individual performances, I would say Kofefi's run in the Miss Preakness Stakes was one of the it was like one of those moments where you're just stop and watch.
Yeah.
And I can't remember her time, but it was 107 and change or something at Pimlico and Pimlico is a relatively slow track, but I was up in the press box at Pimlico, so you're outside looking down, and it was just stunning to me with how fast she was running.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in years.
No, I mean,
and she did that more than once. I mean, the race she had too against Serengeti Empress was at the test.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And both horses laid it down there that day.
Yeah, and then she wraps it up in fashion, puts the exclamation point at the Breeders' Cup.
I know. So to me, I mean, I think she was a superstar of 2019.
Interesting this year, Evan, we didn't have the the standard, the 3-year-old that's going to be in the although, I mean, had Code of Honor won, I think he certainly would have been in the mix for Horse of the Year mention, had he won. With McKenzie in the older division, had he won. Probably now, I don't know, can Matoli be that as a sprinter, or will it be Bricks and Mortar, which looks like to me the front runner is Horse of the Year?
I would say I would like to throw Matoli into the conversation, but I think it's pretty locked down on Bricks and Mortar.
I figure Bricks and Mortar had locked it in.
What he's done is, he's won. He's 5 for 5, 6 for 6.
And just impressive
and
just about
everywhere.
every time,
Yeah, everywhere.
And he and Matoli, I thought, were two of the standouts this year.
And Bricks and Mortar too was all year long a 1.25 mile horse, and they debated what to do in the Breeders' Cup. They put him in a 1.5 mile. He won that too,
which I thought was the perfect. Just look how good this horse is.
Yeah, and well, speaking of individual performances in the mile, Uni.
Crazy. I know.
that was actually my best bet of the day, best selection of the day, and she lived up to it. And she sat out there about the 3 or 4 path, but her sustained run. Go back and watch that race again.
Yeah, she
starts picking it up before she goes into the turn.
Yeah,
that's 3/8 of a mile. She was just motoring.
Oh, it was impressive.
And went by everybody.
Yeah, and people saying who's
7 wide.
Yeah, it just kept going.
I know.
Yeah, another individual performance I thought this year among a trainer is Mark Casse wins 2 legs of the Triple Crown with 2 different horses. Yeah. And you kind of go, Sir Winston, and you forget about War of Will and Sir Winston. You don't forget about him, but as it goes along.
Yeah, this time next year you're going to say, Sir Winston, what?
Who is that?
Yeah.
And we got the Derby horse that never comes back, and I don't know if we'll see Country House again, Ron.
I don't know. We'll see Maximum Security this weekend.
Yeah, Maximum Security.
Cigar Mile.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun. I mean, that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
but back to your point on Mark Casse, what a great guy. As far as, not only a trainer, but just from a rider's perspective or industry perspective, he always has the time to talk to you.
And he gets it. We know
and he's got an opinion, and he's on it.
Yeah,
he's on it.
And obviously Lucas and Baffert, you think of these guys. They kind of set the standards. They got those bites. They throw them out there. They got them. They got the quotes, and Mark picks up on that. And I think a lot of the younger trainers are picking up on that too. That you kind of got to get out there and sell yourself, right? You got to be in print or be on TV so people know who you are.
If you want to be a trainer, that should be half your business.
Yeah,
it's half training horses, half working the clubhouse and getting the right owners.
Yeah, and sometimes it's pulling teeth. You know that. There's some guys.
I've had know a lot of people who've been really good horse people, but they're not. They can't sell themselves.
Excellent horse people. I know a few too.
Well, we have a lot of guys who can sell themselves and can't train. that'll be a Kenny Rice story too.
There've been a few of those. And then I'd have to close down the show. They say, "Look at him now. Look at him. He's just slamming our sport." He shouldn't have mentioned those people.
No, I'm not mentioning any names.
Do you have some favorites out there? Some favorite stories that you covered over the years? Maybe a favorite person? Like for me, example, okay, mine's one obvious one. American Pharoah wins the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
And I'd been there for the near misses and all that. And then the next one would be juxtaposed to that, how well Doug O'Neill handled I'll have another not running at the Belmont. And I had to do the interview with him on not running and then the interview with Bob.
Well,
of
well,
course,
to me
after
personally,
winning.
it was I'll have another winning the Derby. I thought that was a fantastic story.
Yeah.
That was a very financially rewarding for me. But it was a horse that I kind of latched onto. You always look for horses that can do things other horses can't do.
Yeah,
And I'll have another. I think in his first 3-year-old race, he ran a middle half mile that was a crazy fast time, like 47 and something.
Yeah.
And no other horse did that. And so he stood out to me as a horse that could win the Derby. And he kind of got ignored. I mean, he's 15-1. He had Mario Gutierrez. He had Post 19. And the more things that were thrown at him, the more money I was like going up to the window and betting. So it turned out to be a great story. But that's the thing you look for, or I look for in Derby horses, and you find it every once in a while.
Yeah.
Barbaro was one of those. He stood out. Actually, Maximum Security kind of stood out this year, and he was the fastest horse. Just didn't, had some other circumstances. So but to your point, as far as stories, and I hate to go back to Whittingham, but there's no better story than the Sunday Silence Easy Goer story.
yeah,
Hands down.
greatest. For a generation, the greatest rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody remembers was
Not
that
everybody
round to
remembers,
really follow Ali Sheba, Ali Dar, or some of the others. Or Ali Sheba.
No,
Ali Dar.
Ferdinand Ali Dar.
We were talking earlier about Ali Sheba. I've got this Ferdinand Ali Sheba thing on my mind.
That's
from
okay.
these. Thank you.
No, but the positioning between East and West, the positioning between the Phipps versus Arthur Hancock, Whittingham versus young upstart Shug McGahee.
The young Shug McGahee
It had
then,
it all.
yeah.
It had it all.
That was great.
And Sunday Silence was my probably. I mean, if you look at your favorite horses, and you said favorite stories, I would say the Sunday Silence story is the best story.
Yeah.
My favorite.
No, and to me that's a great thing. Nobody can be wrong on that. Really,
That's right? Yeah.
I mean, Swale, because I took my dad to the track and watched him run at Keeneland, I was like Swale.
Okay.
I don't know if he'd be my favorite, but he'd be one of them for that reason.
My dad was a big Holy Bull nut.
Yeah. And so, for those reasons, I think you can have, like you have favorite players, favorite teams.
Yeah.
Which I'd like to see horse racing do a little more. And that's what the Blood Horse does to me, like with the Charlie Whittingham, and I think it needs to be promoted more. Some of these, some of the history to remind young fans about it and keep them interested, because I love the old baseball stuff and the old football stuff, the old NFL films.
Yeah.
And you don't have a lot of those outlets for horse racing. You really don't have any, actually. We'll pull out some for the NBC shows for select things.
Yeah.
But I remember one time doing a story on Don Amici for the Breeders' Cup news feed.
Whoa, that was when is
it was in 93? 93. Yeah, 93, our Kong's year.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. See, that's why you look it up.
That's why you look it up.
But I was out there and he was on the apron. It was in the morning of a workout. And I just went up and introduced myself and asked if I could interview him. And what a gracious man.
Yeah.
And I love it. And he started talking about the old days and pointed up there to boxes. He said, me and Betty Grable sitting there with Ty Power, smoking cigarettes, watching the races.
Yeah.
And, I love that stuff. And actually, Santa Anita was good. They have this footage. And we actually incorporated some of that footage with the story that was on the news feed, not on NBC.
Yeah, and that's true. If you had run into Don Amici somewhere else, he probably would have said, "Beat it, kid."
Yeah.
But at the racetrack, it's like, "Oh yeah, let me tell you about that time we were here," and it's a great story.
And I think people do get involved in that more. At least I think they do.
I mean, but the racetrack is a great place because everybody loosens up a little bit.
Yeah,
Lightens up a little bit.
Even on a bad day, it's a good day.
Even like this year at this year's Breeders' Cup, Shug McGahee was just open and just walking about, and he's never really been a guy who comes up to you and starts a conversation. He came up to me twice.
Well,
Hey, what do you think? What are you doing?
It was a big deal.
Yeah,
it was a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody loosens up a little bit at the track, even if you're working.
Evan, thank you for coming in. Make it to the bunker. Very few people have dared do that.
Well, I got to make sure I get out of the bunker.
Wow, you'll get out. Read it. Read him every week. Read the Blood Horse every week. He's the managing editor, Evan Hammonds, who'll be back with us again in the bunker someday soon, I hope.
Someday soon, I hope so.
We'll be back
Waiting
with
on
more
the call.
right after this. And welcome back. A few precious moments to go here on the Horse Racing Show, episode number 46. Thanks to Brendan Walsh and thanks to Evan Hammonds. And thank you for tuning in, for liking, subscribing, following us on Facebook, Google Play, iTunes, 93.9 The Ville. iHeart,
Stitcher.
and Stitcher.
Stitcher.
iHeart and Stitcher.
We're everywhere.
And
That-
Facebook.
That's right.
and
Even in the
Twitter.
car.
The list just keeps getting longer and
You
longer.
walk out in the parking lot when you leave work today. We might be out there at the sign. You
That's
never
right.
know.
On Nicholasville Road. Yeah, on it was great on the. I didn't realize this car radio. They have the apps now, and
Yeah.
it was really cool seeing our logo up there on iHeart, man.
It's big. You know what? It's been big to be on all of them. For
Yeah.
the people that follow us on Facebook, that continues to grow. The people that continue to like us on YouTube. But you think iHeart, you think Stitcher. People know these. All you hip young kids, Ben Chafins, you know this. You and Thomas Kenny, you know this because you're in there listening to that rock and roll music.
That's right.
Those
Rock and
crazy
roll.
kids.
Don't get me started on today's music.
You young kids in today's music.
You young kids in today's music. I know.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the Who to tour.
Oh man. Yeah. That'd be a good one. I still like the old shows. I even fall for the ones that's like, they're playing the small places now.
Yeah.
I guess that you can get the whole Poison, Rat,
Yeah.
Skid Row in one thing, like one show at a small place.
Hey, I'll tell you something. You know Newfound Glory?
I do. Yes.
Hopefully, we're going to be talking to their leader in a few weeks.
Oh wow.
Oh,
They
wow.
they actually did one of my favorites of From the Screen to Your Stereo.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, see, he knows horse racing, and so he may be on with us.
Wow.
That's a tease of what's coming up.
Ooh.
You never know what's coming up. That's why you have to tune in each week. Again, Brendan Walsh, Evan Hammonds, thank you. Thank you for being with us. I'm Kenny Rice, and we will hopefully see you and talk to you again next week here on the Horse Racing Show.
Wow.